Yeah, so now we'll cover something about functions and classes in PHP. Previously, we covered about strings and arrays as well, and variables, how to declare variables. Now today we'll use a editor for PHP. This is Code Lobster, right? You can use your own. I have like Dreamweaver also installed. So yesterday we did this, and if you remember, this was the output previously. Now we'll move on to next topic, functions. So how to declare functions in PHP? The syntax is simple. You write function, the function name, and since PHP does not have any integer data type, you need not to define those type of things. So a function also need not to have any return type defined. So let's say I am writing my first function. We will make a small calculator to understand, small add function, right? So it's good to use camel case while giving naming, while using naming convention, that is first letter small in functions and variable, and then subsequent words which comes in, they should be caps like this. Add function, let's say the example. So since it will take two parameters, so $var1, $var2. Okay, so the benefit of using a editor is this, like it has put its the braces by itself, and then it indented by itself, and it also gives you suggestion when you are using predefined functions. Okay, add functions, it will return. I can define any type of return. I need not to return anything even, and I can return as well. It will return $var1 plus $var2. Sorry. Okay. I'll call this function here. Let's say I want to add two numbers, sum equals to add function 5 and 6. Okay, so I'll echo, because it will just return it. I'll echo it, $sum is here, right? Now we'll run it, and we get the output. Okay, so this was about function. Now let's say if I want to make a subtract function, or okay, I want to define certain values that if the user doesn't input any value, it will assume by default the second value or maybe the value, right? So I can also give default values to the variables in the function definition. So how to give it? Let's say if the user doesn't input a second value, it will take 0 as a second value. So I'll give it this. Now if I call this function like this also, it will work fine, and it will assume the second value by itself. So if you run this function, you get the 5 as an output. Okay, so this is the way you define default value. So let's say it is needed in the case, let's say you are making a form in which you generally expect the students will be male. So you can always keep the default value as male, and if the user inputs it, then it will only change. Let's say if the female is there, then it will go to change female, otherwise it will remain by default male. Okay, so this was basic about functions. You can declare functions as you like. You can return, you can echo in functions. So if I do something like echo the sum for, let's say $var1 and $var2. Okay, so it will then by default echo it. Oh, I forgot to put the semicolon, and we also forgot to call the function, right? Yeah, the sum for 5 and 0, and we didn't give any space, so it was printed like this. If you do it, it will come. Okay, fine. So you can echo anything in the function, you can return from anything in the function, and accordingly process the output. The echoing part doesn't get into this sum variable, it will just get printed on the screen. Okay, this was about function, simple. PHP has many predefined functions as well. So as we used yesterday, the count function, and then there are different functions you can always explore. There's a very commonly used function, date function. Right, so if it takes the input in the form in the required format, let's say you want to output the date. So D M Y, let's say 1 is the format. So when I do this, it will echo the July 23 accordingly. Okay, and if I do this, it will equal. So accordingly, there are many options available. You can always refer the websites. So the best source for the website is attached, is php.net, and you will find all the definitions of functions and classes and predefined things there. Okay. Now we'll cover about classes. So how to declare a class, right? So this is a keyword for class, and then you write the class name. So it's advisable to write the class name beginning with the caps. So this is the let's say we will make a calculator class, calc, and then obviously it will have its braces where you define the class. It will have many functions. It can have it supports all type of data types as well, and it has a constructor, it has a destructor, as all classes have, and then it also supports private, public, protected, and static. So I hope you know what is private, public, protected. It is a basic concept of OOPS, and this is all covered in the classes. So we'll see how to declare a constructor in the PHP. So after PHP 5 onwards, they have defined a new way of declaring the constructor, which is construct, right? And if it is going to have by default some values, let's say val1 and $val2. Okay, so this is how you declare a constructor. It's a double underscore and you write construct. Okay, now let's say we define certain variables in the class which are private. So $val1. You can also define variables like this. Okay, I have not defined any, it's not required to define any data type. I have not kept this function public or private, so by default this public. Okay, so let's say this initializes. Now if I want to call my this variable, the private val1 val2, in my function construct, or maybe in any function, so how do I refer to the variable of my class? Because it can be confused with the variable val1 which have local scope in the function only. Now I want to take this value and assign it to this value. So there is a keyword this, like we have in Java, we also have in PHP, this keyword. We write it like this, $this, then dash, greater than sign, and the variable name, right? Now we do not write dollar again, we just write the variable name here. Okay, because we have already written dollar here, right? So this will assign the values to the private variable that is available up. Okay, so from local to class I have made this scope. The constructor does nothing but just to initialize val1 and val2 in this case. Okay, then we can have our own functions. The function add, let's say we define it now in this way. So it is giving me some certain this suggestions which are predefined functions, but in our case it won't. You will use. Okay, yeah. So this should return. So it can return a string plus integer, anything, right? So the sum of variables, let's say, is $this val1 plus, so we'll have to include this thing in brackets so that it doesn't confuse it, val2. Okay, yeah. So this is, I have defined a small simple class. Now how to call the class and how to initialize it. So let's say cal equals to new calc. Since it takes two parameters as we have seen, so first is, let's say, 5 and then is 6. Okay, this is the defined constructor we called. Now supposedly I want to call the let's say the add function. So this is the symbol that we use, the operator that we use for calling the function inside the class. So this doesn't take any input, and it will return it, so we can directly echo this, and when we'll run we get the desired output. You can see this. Okay, so this is how you make a simple class which with a single function. You can define many functions and the constructor, and how you provide values to the class. Okay, now we'll cover in the next video about static functions, how to call static functions. A little bit complex mechanism we'll use. Okay, thank you.